Hi there, this is Brian Braiker, editor of Ad Age, and thanks for joining us remotely and live. We're doing a live chat today with Jason DeLand, who is founding partner of Anomaly. Anomaly is a New York-based new model agency with offices in Los Angeles, Toronto, London, Amsterdam, Berlin, and Shanghai. Jason, it's lovely to see your handsome face on my screen.
Yours too.
We are here today to discuss the lasting impact of the pandemic on all aspects of life and business, from brand behavior to consumer behavior, the environment, the cannabis industry, we'll get to that, and more. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Jason. If you are watching this live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Periscope, or Twitch, you can leave a comment and we will try to get to the comments or questions as they arise. We are doing this live, technology permitting. We'll get to everybody. So let's get started. Jason, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. How are you feeling?
I'm okay. No dry coughs. I have my sense of smell. Everything's good. Is this your home office we're looking at?
It is. It's where I've been spending, I think, like a lot of people out there, a lot of time. So I'm very fortunate to have one of these. It's good to have separation a little bit from the family, be able to do the work of the day.
Yeah. So let's get down to it. We are here to talk about the sort of lasting implications of what's going on various aspects of life. You are sort of not only a student of advertising, but this is just more of an interesting, broader conversation about what is interesting in terms of what's happening now, and what is likely to persist in terms of the way our behavior is changing. So we can address that from the brand side. We can address that from the consumer side. We'll do both. But let's start with the brands. You're obviously in conversation with clients. How are you seeing brand behavior changing at this moment? It's sort of evolving in real time right in front of us.
Well, I think we're all dealing with it right now in real time. So, what we're seeing today will be likely different than what we see tomorrow and next week. But I think the crux of it is right now, I think brands are very cautious and rightly so. What we are experiencing right now, if you just put it in context, and I think putting things in context is the most helpful thing to do. But what we're seeing is the largest economic regions in the world, the largest population centers in the world right now, as we speak, are being disrupted. They're being disrupted economically, obviously. They're being disrupted culturally, but all of that is being affected by a healthcare disruption, a health disruption that everyone is facing. And I think, as I look at this, and I've been asked so many times, like, what do you think is going to happen? No one has a crystal ball, right? But there is a lot of justifiable uncertainty out there.
Yeah, when you talk about putting things into context, this is not a situation that has a lot of context to it. Nothing that we're familiar with.
No, and I've been spending a lot of time sort of looking at past crises, to help pattern match and study history. I look back at the Spanish flu and how that changed things. And, there wasn't a modern media and marketing world then. You can only look at human behavior. And, but what I see in brands more specifically is I see them either taking, there's two sides of this. There's the business side, which is about how do we conserve, how do we be prudent? How do we make sure that we are not taking unnecessary risks? How do we save our business? How do we take care of our employees? These are all vital questions, and they are business questions and they are brand questions. But then what the brands do, the question that brands ask, and I'm talking about the notion of what a brand is. How can we help out here? What should we be doing? Not just what our message is, but what can we do as a brand to show to people that we are there, we care, and we are doing interesting things. And we're not just putting the duvet over our head and waiting for this to pass, because I don't think that's a responsible strategy.
So that's the here and now. Are we seeing brands operate or change the way they operate in the here and now that is going to continue beyond July, beyond August, beyond when we think the pandemic may be winding down?
Well, I think it's sort of a false thing that I've seen is a return to, right? Like a return to what life was like in October or November. And the reason, when you take it in the realm of context, there is no return back to something. There will be a bounce forward to something. What I think is a major opportunity in something really like sort of this tragedy that can also be a gift is, okay, what are companies prepared to do right now, right? Like what I mean by that is, what are they going to make better? What are they going to improve? How are they going to develop winning strategies and ideas to bounce forward?
Can you cite any examples of something that you think may have a lasting impact, or something that you've seen that you think might sort of carry forward beyond the current crisis?
I'm going to speak generally and then specifically. I think what I think is having empathy, being human, right? Trying to understand, pause, reflect, be calm in the face of, chaos. These are the things that I think people are looking for, and brands as reference points, I think, can play a role there, whether they be a brand like, something, that a global brand, or even a person. I think what, Christian Siriano has done in the fashion industry, a person who is known for making, there it is right there, a person who is known for making, couture gowns and things like that, has gone, you know what? I watched Governor Cuomo give a speech saying that we need face masks. I have 8 people in New York City that are ready to go, and I'm going to I'm going to put my spin on that and make them for people. I think that's genius.
Yeah, and it will probably have lasting effects for his own personal brand, and sort of a halo effect, whether it's the intent or not.
Yeah,
going
because it demonstrates our unique characteristics of empathy, creativity, and human ingenuity in solving problems. And it's just a wonderful example. I think what Uber Eats has done has been great about making it really accessible for small and family-owned restaurants to be able to use their platform in a way that they can still, capture revenue and make money, or just now using their platform to be able to deliver groceries to people. These are examples of brands and people doing something that is relevant for the moment without being markety or salesy or advertising-y, that can legitimately help people. And I think those are the types of things that will have a lasting impact. LVMH and even Anheuser-Busch InBev making hand sanitizer, because they recognize that the germs on the hand that go to the face is the thing that makes this virus so virulent. And those are just some very brief examples of understanding the context of empathy and ingenuity and creativity in finding the right ways to behave as opposed to just communicate something.
So let's talk about you specifically at Anomaly, and just to tee it up again for people who may be joining us a little later. I'm Brian Braiker, the editor of Ad Age. We're speaking with Jason DeLand, who is the co-founding partner of Anomaly, which is an MDC agency. Sorry for stumbling on that. You guys do a lot of great work, a lot of interesting creative work, business work in terms of the under the hood stuff of businesses. How are you specifically thinking about this crisis? What are the conversations you're having with your clients? What is happening in your world specifically right now?
Well, I think part of it is knowing the context and the seat and putting yourself in the shoes of those clients. I mean, we're all businesses right now. We're all feeling some degree of pain, right? And we're trying to figure out how to move forward. I think the way that we've approached this is in 2 words, very balanced, right? And when I look at the response, particularly from some of our institutions in government, I think in the beginning, a lot of them underreacted, and now they're in this trap where they must overreact. And that can't be good, right? We need to be balanced. We can't just allow ourselves to be the victim of circumstance all day, every day. So we need a plan. So, when we we took a view very early that this was a punctuation of equilibrium. And I know that's kind of like a wonky thing to say. It's one of my favorite principles. It actually comes from a biologist named Jay Gould, who said, look, I don't think evolution happens in a straight linear fashion. I think it's punctuated by major events. So,
yeah, we've been knocked off. We've been knocked off our orbit a little bit.
Exactly. So a great example of that is the asteroid that came, and hit the Yucatan Peninsula 65 million years ago and wiped dinosaurs off the face of the earth. It gave rise to something new and different. I think this is an example of that, something new and different. From an anomaly point of view, I believe that some of the biggest opportunities are about to unveil themselves, generally, as it relates to culture and commerce. And I think while this is incredibly tragic because we're talking about the loss of human life, the underlying reality is inescapable, that we will prevail, that we will innovate, that we will make the world better as a result. And I see Anomaly and our entire industry as playing a role there. And we had the benefit, though, I think, of having an office in Shanghai, a very healthy office there. I lived in China, so we sort of were able to see what was happening there and then pattern match and go, this is likely what's going to happen in the West. And sadly, a lot of those predictions turned out to be accurate.
Right. But now you're seeing the offices in China return to work and come back online gradually.
As Karina Wilshire, said to me, our global CEO said to me, last week, our most optimistic office calls when we do our daily, weekly contact with all of the different offices, the most optimistic sounding office is Shanghai. And I think that is a very positive thing for us in this industry in the United States and the West to look forward to.
Now, you were one of the agencies who early on had to let some people go directly because of the virus. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that experience and what the plan going forward is with either those people or staffing in general?
I mean, so like I said, we were very, very balanced about this. The reason why we acted early is so that we didn't have to overreact late. And I see a lot of that happening now. There's a little bit more visibility because of what the Congress has put into a law recently as it relates to a very significant multi-trillion-dollar stimulus act and the moves that the Federal Reserve has made to back up the monetary system. I would say that my thinking on the layoffs, which was about 10% of just our New York office, was based on our experience during 2008. And it was still very fresh in my mind about the things that we didn't do and we didn't act soon enough when we should have. And then we were caught sort of quote unquote on the back foot. We decided to go early this time simply because we saw the data coming out of China. We understood the conversations that we were having with some of our clients that are exposed to the travel industry. We knew that there were cuts coming, and what we wanted to do is get out ahead of that so that we did not have to do more drastic things later on. Luckily, that looks to be the right move, and but all that said, as an executive in this business, and I think I speak for everyone who's ever been through it, the worst job of your life is to tell someone they no longer have a job at your place because you hired them and you have a responsibility for their career. What we did though—
how can brands help demonstrate empathy and bring perspective?
I think they have to think about this is classic stuff. Most broadly, think about what people are dealing with all day, every day. Think about the parents who now are homeschooling their children, right? Who are worried about where their next paycheck is coming from. Where people, on the lower side of the socioeconomic ladder are thinking about real concerns like, food insecurity. People who might have been struggling and to pay for healthcare. The anxiety that they're going to have if they get sick. The vast majority of baby boomers who are in their, late 60s, 70s, and 80s, and what they must be going through. I think the role of any business, any company right now that wants to play a larger role in their customers' lives, they have to start thinking about those people first and themselves second.
Mm-hmm. And then since we are having a conversation about lasting impact, can you break it out a little more broadly about how this might affect the broader marketing and media industry in 2021, 2022?
Good question. I mean, everyone who's listening to this is doing so in a very different fashion. We probably normally would have been in a conference room somewhere in New York City or LA. So I think the notions of distance and place have definitely changed short term. My guess is they're going to continue down that path long term. So consequently, I believe how this industry, certainly how Anomaly organizes, is going to be different.
The culture of work itself across industries is going to evolve, I would imagine.
100%. Perhaps it will be more fluid, I think in our industry, more understanding of people's time and talent. That to me is a very important thing. I think for a while that had been taken advantage of. There's going to be more distance collaboration. I think tools like G Suite and Zoom and Airtable and Slack, they're going to be playing a much larger role in this industry's in the way that we do business. Mm-hmm. But I also go, back to this notion of punctuation of equilibrium, and everything's changed and changing, and the new sort of normal is going to be is being built right now. As a creative industry, we can thrive. I mean, it is an amazing time to have the type of talent that this industry possesses. And I'm not talking about creativity conflated with advertising, right? I think creativity to solve problems, to invent things, to frame issues, to help consumers navigate their world, make better decisions, and ultimately provide usefulness and utility, but in inspiring ways. And I think if the industry, I've always believed that the industry needs to move that way. And there's a lot of good examples of that happening. And I firmly believe that if we do that as an industry, we will emerge stronger and better from it with a little bit less overhead.
Yeah, well, I love that. I love the optimism. I want to once again restate who we all are. I'm Brian Braiker, editor of Ad Age, speaking with Jason DeLand, founding partner at Anomaly, which is a global agency. Would love to speak with, would love to give some shout outs, actually. We have shout outs from Andrew my screen moved. Adam from Santa Monica, Carla from Montana, Carmelo from Spain, Kim from Dallas, Shan from Toronto. We've got people all over the world tuned in. Dubai, Cameron, Chicago, Scotland. So that's great.
Anyone from Syracuse? Sorry.
No one from Syracuse. Well, no one vocally from Syracuse. We do have a question about the cruise industry and how that can bounce back. Mm-hmm. I find it insane that people are still on boats out there cruising around. What would you advise to a Norwegian or a cruise line that wants to stay in business?
Well, I think that there's going to be some obviously short-term disruptions are obvious. How things evolve are going to be based on human psychology and what people want to do with their time, with their money. I do think that there is good. I was talking to an airline executive last week, who sort of.
It all blurs together at this point.
It does, but jokingly said to me, the middle seat in coach is forever gone, to which I went, that's awesome. And there's just going to be more distance between people. Will these cruise lines, will they be less occupied? Will there be more space? Will we think about social distancing now, not as something that we have to do, but something that we just are doing? It becomes a habit of our everyday life, and that's kind of how I see a lot of these businesses that are, that have thrived on people being in tight quarters. This relates to sports and entertainment and gambling, music, Live Nation. All of these things we're about to enter into a very collective conversation informed by the science and healthcare considerations on how these things transform and evolve over time. And I believe our industry has definitely the ability to help shape and form those ideas.
Yeah, no, I love that. And moving from the brand, and whether it's a travel company or entertainment company, to the consumer themselves, I love the idea of habits, because once a habit becomes ingrained, I think it says there's a wonderful book called The Power of Habit, which I can't recommend enough. That that what it takes 60 days for a habit to become ingrained or something like that.
Yep.
By all accounts, we're going to be working on these new habits for at least the next 60 days.
Yeah.
What behaviors are you seeing consumers moving away from or towards?
Yeah, well, that theory is based on the notion that the human brain is neuroplastic, and once it, with stimulus, it changes its plasticity, and then you get into a new sort of thing. And I was talking to someone who I used to work with at Anomaly, and she said something very interesting to me. She said, and this is proven, and I'm forgetting the source, but she goes, the habits that we fall into during times of crisis stick with us for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And that
you saw survivors of the Depression who would never who would like hoard their food and
well, it's like my wife's great grandmother. She saves little chips of soap that are like this big throughout the entire year, and then and puts them in a baggie, Ziploc baggie, and then at the end of the year she uses that as soap for 3 months.
Amazing.
And she's a child of the Depression. But to your question about what consumers are moving away from or toward, right? So again, I like to speak in the macro, because I think it's framing it up here that I think is most important. But if you just look at the context that we're living in today, I think we're moving towards family, humanity, health, physical activity. I love this notion of personal betterment, getting smarter, right? I think good news is we're moving towards logic and empiricism and away from, I'm not even going to get it political, right? Like we're moving away from maybe, dogmatism and opportunism. We're moving towards calm. We're moving towards emotional connection. I think we're moving towards home. We're moving towards things like preparedness and pragmatism. All of those things to me are emergent and ascending. And they're actually really healthy.
We're also moving towards big game cats, apparently, and Tiger King. Talk about the environmental impact. I know you're bullish on sort of how this could help improve the damage we've done already, and it's a big topic, but when you talk about new habits, the habits that maybe we're working on now will be less destructive.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I think every pandemic that we talk about, whether, whether we go all the way back to the Spanish flu or the plague or smallpox or where we are now, when you study them, look, the reality is these are biological crises, and I think what's interesting today is sort of these combining of ideas or notions that our health, our physical health, and the health of the planet are being tied together more and more in the zeitgeist out there. Mm-hmm. And I believe this is a very good thing, right? That's my personal belief. I'm trying very hard not to get political about this at all, so I'm going to not even weigh in on the political side of the environmental debate, but I expect that combination, right, that amalgam, to continue and accelerate because of COVID-19. It's been said many times, the best way to avoid getting sick is to stay healthy. And the relationships, I believe, to the planet, our forests, our air, our oceans, are proven to be directly related to our well-being. And this is, to me, because of COVID, there's going to be more and more science and research and thinking and ideas that accentuate those notions, right? Or prove those notions. So perhaps this crisis makes it clearer to people out there that our food system, our carbon footprint, our water health, our entire ecosystem are so tightly connected. And when you look at what's so interesting, and I'll get a little historical here, when studying the Spanish flu came from someone in either Missouri or Kansas handling pigs that were sick and chickens that were sick. And that virus somehow got into this human being and then was able to make the jump to humans, right? Human to human. When the scientists of the world unpacked a third of the world population dying and trying to figure out why and what to do about it, one of the things that they said was, we need to be very careful about how we treat livestock and about how humans interact with livestock. That we should not have livestock in close proximity, stacked on each other all of the time, and we should be extremely vigilant about how farmers, right, handle these livestock. And so when I look at that, and then I look at the industrial farming complex that we seem to be so wedded to globally, which I know why we are, and I'm not arguing against it morally, but I'm just saying, look, lessons will repeat them, like history will repeat itself unless we learn these lessons. We learned this lesson a long time ago, and then we just forgot it. And I do hope that for some, that some of us begin to change our consumption habits as a result of this.
This is actually a great question here on LinkedIn that sort of ties into that a little bit. I'm Brian Braiker, editor of Ad Age, speaking with Jason DeLand, who is the founding partner at Anomaly. When you talk about lasting habits and the way we sort of interact and go out into the world, we have Patrick on LinkedIn here asking, do you believe attendance at live entertainment and sports events will snap back quickly, or will people be reluctant to gather in large groups for a while? And I think this is a good question that applies to industry across segments. Will there be a snap back, or will there be a sort of gradual easing into the bathtub?
I mean, flip a coin. Yeah. I honestly don't know. I mean, if I'm a giant Yankee fan, and if someone said to me, you can go and be 6 feet apart from where the next person that you're sitting next to and watch a Yankee game, that would be lovely for me. And I would do that. You know, when you look at deprivation sciences and consumer behavior, when someone is deprived of something that they love, they don't fall out of love with it. Their relationship with it increases over time, that they don't have it. And
absence makes the heart grow fonder to a degree.
Exactly. It works with us humans, and it works on the things that we love. And, you know, I do believe that, particularly as it relates to sports as being such a giant passion point, my prediction, and I don't want to be making many of them here, but my prediction is that we're wildly going to get back into sports in this country. And to me, that's really good. I do think that everyone will be second guessing going into extreme crowded environments, but it doesn't mean that if Yankee Stadium can hold 35,000 people, that 15,000 people can't go and watch a baseball game straight out of the gates. Like, I do think that as the medical professionals understand this more and more, you know, we are quickly understanding that it's what you have on your hands and you touch your face. That's the thing that's going to make this the most virulent and give you the greatest chance of catching it. If we eliminate those things, there's a lot of research out there that suggests you can pretty much eliminate getting it. And then, of course, I just look at the curves of these things, and I talk to a lot of doctors. My best friend being one in the U.S. military, and you know he's pretty not sure, but his theory and a lot of doctors' theory is that as this moves into the spring, we're going to be essentially getting some sort of herd immunity, and hopefully, you know, it will calm down a little bit, and then of course hold out hope for a therapeutic or a vaccine
before it comes back in the fall.
Before it comes back in the fall, exactly.
Yeah, so I want to circle back to the environment. We were talking about the environment and the effect on the world. This is a stretch of a segue, but you are also a founding partner of Dosis, which is a medicinal cannabis company.
Yep.
Curious to know how you are seeing the coronavirus's impact on the cannabis industry, both legal and sort of the grayer areas.
Well, I think, you know, I mean, this is where it gets really interesting to people out there who run small agencies. You know, Dosis is a venture-backed small business. That's what it is. And so from that point of view, in any industry, I feel for small businesses right now because I know what they're going through. My father owns a very small roofing contracting company in upstate New York. He knows it's going to be very difficult for a while. And all small businesses right now are struggling, and they're trying to figure out, you know, the web of government relief via the SBA, how to make payroll, the rent, not to mention just the incredible disruptions to the supply and value chains, right? In a way, cannabis is on the front lines of this because, you know.
Well, it was deemed an essential business.
Exactly. It was deemed an essential business. So, you know, I think, so demand is there. That's clear, right? People have decided that one of the things that they would like to have in their pantry during this time is cannabis. That's fine. But, you know, I think that, you know, the cannabis industry had gone through two successive crises prior to this. One was a repricing of all of the publicly traded companies because the valuations were seen as exorbitant, and they were. Then came eval, or the vaporization crisis, which was sort of a media-driven hysteria over what was essentially black market tainted product. And now
we're talking about like the vaping product, like Juul, and the illnesses that people were contracting. You're saying that was overstated.
I'm saying that no, I'm not saying that any death is overstated. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it became sort of a media-driven phenomenon more than anything else. And then what you had is you have now COVID, right? So I think that as an emerging industry, what I'm seeing in it is demand is high, but this industry does not have access to federal relief the way that all other small businesses do. And so what you are seeing is you're seeing a lot of pain in this industry. A lot of companies will combine for reasons that don't make much sense or just go out of business. On the positive side, which I see a lot of just plain old fashioned creativity, ingenuity, problem solving, and companies, sort of starting some partnerships within the supply chain, distribution, and retail, so that they can stay in business. And that's great for the industry. As far as Dosist is concerned, we're about to launch a couple new products next week. We're a healthy business right now. We've done really well through this. It's a struggle, no doubt about it, but we are continuing to innovate and continuing to do things so that when we do when we do bounce forward, the company is in good shape to give consumers what they want.
I like the idea of bouncing forward versus returning. We have time for one more sort of user submitted question. Again, I'm Brian Braiker, editor of Ad Age. I'm speaking with Jason DeLand, founding partner of Anomaly and Dosist, and how many other businesses? 473. So insanely prolific number. We have Andre on YouTube who's asking, and this is great because I know you're a design-minded person. Dosist is a very design-minded brand. How will the current virus crisis affect functional design practice, whether it's size of tables, sitting far 6 feet away from people, depth of bar top, whether it's like physical space or product?
Yes. So the notions of ideas, creativity, design-led thinking, problem solving, these are all in my opinion, extremely high demand right now. And a lot of it will be based on how the COVID crisis resolves itself, if it resolves itself, and how long that takes. But let's assume for a moment that it's just kind of with us for a while. Yes, the world of industrial and product design and problem solving are going to be absolutely needed. How do we reimagine an airplane, a concert, a restaurant, a bar? How do we think of a movie theater? How do we think of Walt Disney World? How do we think of any place where human beings congregate with each other, socialize with each other, be entertained and interact? And this is a major cognition question right now. And I think imagining those sets of possibilities is fun for any creative professional.
It's exciting. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to spend too much time asking you to predict the future, but let's end on a fun question, or a more relatively fun question. I know you think about the role of humor in a situation like this. I like to think about the role of humor, whether it's in marketing or in branding or in just communications.
Yeah.
Speak to the role of humor in a very dark time.
Yes. I think humor, art, expression, when human beings are just generally trying to figure out what happens next, or fearful or uncertain, is needed. It's a great relief, but it also helps us see things, I think, sometimes a little more clearly. They're all vital. All of those things are vitally important to me, and so not just in the context of communications, but in the context of, I think, human psychology. I love seeing the Italians singing on their apartment balconies. That's not humor, but it puts a smile on your face. I think I sent you.
Did you see there's a Biggie equivalent in Brooklyn?
Yes.
Which was incredible. Yeah.
In like humans expressing themselves in real and authentic ways, you know, cutting through this sort of like veneer of this, of what we thought was cool and important is changing, you know, and like someone said to me not too long ago, like, what were you doing 3 months ago? Why did you think you were so busy and what you were doing was so important? And I went, yeah, that's really interesting. I think Sam Jackson reading this sort of that, you know, expert-based nighttime story, or just thousands of memes flying around expressing humor, laughter, love, you know, or just laugh out loud shit to break the mood up a little bit. Those are amazing. Someone said to me, Johnny Vulcan, who's a partner at Anomaly, founder, said to me, he goes, what I'm seeing out of people in Italy and China is this sort of notion that they've binge watched everything, they've social media themselves out, you know, and they're now looking for some simple things, like just some simple stuff, like a nice walk, a bike ride, you know, a run, maybe reading something. But the other side of that was people are forced to understand and know themselves in ways that they weren't forced to do so before this happened. And people are going, wait, who am I? Where am I going? What's important to me? You know, like this sort of like global eat, pray, love kind of moment, right? Yeah. And I find that to be really cool because I think there's a lot of people that are going, I'm going to improve things. I'm going to improve where I live, my home. I'm going to improve my physical, you know, being, my financial situation. You know, I'm going to return to health and wellness. And like, I want to become a better version of myself. And it's also, things to me are incredible.
Yeah. Well, it's also okay if you don't. It's also okay if you sit in a corner and panic and just have to deal with the situation as it comes. Not everyone's going to emerge out of this.
Stop projecting.
Superhuman. I will say I went on a bike ride with my 14-year-old yesterday. It was a highlight of maybe my month. I think that's basically what we have time for. Jason DeLand, founding partner of Anomaly, thank you for joining us today. I will go back to something you talked about earlier on in this conversation, and that was the Uber Eats example of delivery. If you're at home and you're getting deliveries, tip the hell out of those people. Not going to tell anyone else what to do on any other level. Just tip the hell out of those people.
If you're in the position to be generous nowadays, now's the time for generosity.
Absolutely. And then we can leave it with that. Thank you for joining us. Everyone who was out there watching, thank you for talking with me, Jason. This was a pleasure.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks. Bye.